This episode of Simple Civics Greenville County is made possible by Beth and Mike Andrews, Kelly Byers and Tom Wagner, Elizabeth and Grant Bogus. We thank them for their support and for connecting you, our listeners, with candidates so you'll be informed voters this primary season. You can give to Simple Civics too. Just visit our website at simplecivicsgreenvillecounty.org. The 2026 South Carolina statewide primary is officially underway, and South Carolinians are showing up at the ballot box in numbers that are catching a lot of folks by surprise. I'm Katie Smith with Greater Good Greenville, and on this episode of Simple Civics Greenville County, our producer Nathaniel DeSantis and I are checking in mid-primary early voting on the 2026 primaries. We're breaking down the historic voter turnout we're already seeing, reminding you of critical deadlines coming up on June 5th and June 9th, and explaining why a massive surge in candidates means we're almost certainly heading to a high-stakes runoff on June 23rd. Whether you've already cast your ballot or haven't even looked at it yet, we're here to help you navigate the homestretch. Get your calendars out and let's dive into why your vote right now carries so much weight. And we're here to help you with that vote. Visit simplecivicsgreenvillecounty.org and our candidate lookup tool will pop up. It's also in the show notes. It can help you look up your sample ballot, check out candidates, and hear directly from them so you can make a wise decision at the ballot.
Welcome back to Simple Civics, everyone. Nathaniel here with Katie. And Katie, early voting has been open, and the numbers coming out of the great people at the South Carolina Election Commission are truly turning heads. They're turning our heads. So why don't you tell everyone, what are you seeing and what is the Election Commission seeing? What's making everyone's heads turn?
So turning heads is an understatement. We are seeing historic, record-breaking levels of early voter turnout across South Carolina and right here in Greenville County. And usually June primaries are pretty sleepy times, which we always complain about and worry about here at Simple Civics Greenville County. You've heard us say we're lucky we get, 14% of registered voters, 17% show up. But the lines at early voting centers tell a completely different story this year. Now, we're recording this on the afternoon of Monday, June 1st, so there's been one full week of early voting in, and this data is as of Friday afternoon at the end of that week. So as of Friday, May 29th, 151,000 voters in the state had already voted early. That's with 1 week of early voting left to go. And with the full early voting period completed in 2024, there was 120,000 voters total. So we've already blown that out of the water. And in 2022, when early voting was still pretty new, there were just 100,000 overall. So we've exceeded by more than 30,000 people the last early voting period in the entirety. And we still have 5 days to go until early voting ends Friday, June 5th.
Why do you think that is? Is it just that people are more energized this year? Is there a specific driver that you're seeing that's causing this turnout?
I think it's a couple things. One big headline happened last Tuesday when voting opened. The South Carolina Senate was considering redistricting, and that was happening just as early voting was open. And so many people went out to vote to make a statement that they did not believe redistricting should happen at the same time as people were actually voting. But we also talked about the big box of crayons in a previous episode, meaning that so many more of our local races are competitive this year. 72% of our local races are competitive. And we have crowded, wide open races for governor and U.S. Senate. And this means that when voters have a choice, they show up. It is a very exciting year in which your primary vote really makes a difference and will continue on into November. So it's just, there's a lot of energy and a lot of reason to show up, and people are doing it. Now, I want to tap into Greenville County voters' competitive spirits here. So our overall voting is high, and our Greenville County voting is high. However, we are listed third as a county in early voting with close to 12,000 voters as of Friday afternoon. But you guys, Richland and Charleston are beating us. Charleston has already nearly 14,000 voters as of Friday. So get out there, Greenville County. We want to show up well and have a high turnout overall.
So we're going to get to some dates later on, but before we do that, can we do a quick refresher for anyone who might be new to the state or voting in a primary for the first time, because it's a little bit different everywhere? How exactly do primaries work in South Carolina?
Okay, the most important rule to remember is that South Carolina has open primaries, meaning when you register to vote in our state, you do not register as a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, or any other party. You are just a registered voter. In your heart, you may feel like you're a registered Republican or a registered Democrat, and you register that, with your love, and you might pay dues to be a part of a party. But in South Carolina, none of us is affiliated with a party.
So when you walk into the polling place, what happens?
Yeah, we all go to the same polling places. You will walk in and the poll worker will ask you a question and they'll say, "Which party's primary would you like to vote in today?" And they really don't care which one you vote in. So don't feel weird about it. You're going to choose one. You're going to choose Republican or Democratic. Now, we only have those two primaries, even though there are other parties in the state who have primary candidates. They don't hold a primary in which any of us can walk in and vote. So you cannot vote in both the Republican and the Democratic primary, but you are entirely free to choose whichever ballot you want. Voting in a Republican primary this June does not mean you have to vote for only Republican candidates in November and vice versa. The primary is simply the system where the parties choose who get to carry their flag to the general election and be on that ballot in November. So, what that means is take a look at both parties' ballots, unless you are like firmly a Democrat or firmly a Republican, you would never consider voting in another primary. If you are more of a kind of independent person, someone who crosses over based on the candidate, look at our candidate lookup tool. Put in your address, choose the Democratic ballot, take a look at who the folks are that you could vote on, do the same with the Republican ballot, and decide when you go in to vote which one you're going to say you are voting in. And that is the ballot that will be loaded for you in your voting machine.
So let's talk then about why it's important for people to vote now rather than just waiting for November. We hear it all the time. I'll just vote in the general election. Why is that a mistake in South Carolina?
A couple reasons. First of all, in many parts of Greenville County, June is the actual election. Even though we have more choices, people on both sides of the aisle have voted to run, or from both parties, I should say. We still have major local districts where only candidates of one party filed to run. And so that will be decided in June rather than November.
Could you maybe give us some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, that would probably help. So here's two. On the Republican side, if you look at Greenville County Council District 17, which is in northern Greenville County, 4 Republicans filed to run and 0 Democrats did. So after June, when it's decided who the winner is, that's the only name that will appear on the ballot, and they will be the next council member. And that's true in another area on the Democratic side. In County Council District 23, there are 3 Democrats who filed to run and 0 Republicans. So that will be your winner in Greenville County.
Yeah. So to drive home that point, if let's use District 23 as the example, if you wait until November to vote, your choice has been made for you. There's nothing you can do about it. It has been determined right now. So that's why it's important. Your general election ballot will only have that name on it.
Yep, that's right. I mean, primaries are where a lot of specific policy debates and ideological choices happen. Certainly, if there's only one party listed. But even among a party, if you looked closely at those candidates in District 17, for example, or in District 23, they have differences among them that really might matter to you. That when you go in November, even if you're a Republican and you're excited that there's no other choice, you might have an opinion about which of the 4 Republicans you'd want to represent you. So primaries really matter in that sense.
And in some cases, there's a thing called a runoff. And we're going to start talking about math here. So stick with us. But there's something called a 50% rule. Katie, could you explain what that is for everyone listening?
Yes. And so the main takeaway, guys, from what I'm about to share is that even though early voting ends June 5th, the primary itself is June 9th, it is highly unlikely to be over. So to win a primary outright in South Carolina, a candidate has to get 50% plus one vote. They have to win a majority of votes in a party, not just the plurality. So if you have a race with 3 or 4 or 7 candidates, it is mathematically incredibly difficult for just one person to get more than half the votes on the first try. I mean, if you look right now at the Republican candidates for governor and the polling for them, the leader in the poll at any given moment is usually pulling about 17% of the vote because there's so many folks out there. And of course, a lot of undecideds. So there will, like, with almost certainty, be a runoff for the Republican gubernatorial election.
So then what happens when it does go to a runoff? Who actually goes to the runoff?
Yeah, the top 2 vote getters are the ones that show up on the ballot. So, you know, in that polling example I got, if it does break out that way, I didn't really do the math to take into account undecideds deciding, but let's just say someone gets 17.5% of the vote and the next person gets 16.9% of the vote. Even though those are pretty small numbers, those are the 2, if they're the top, that would go onto the runoff.
And so I'm curious, let's say there's a candidate who has 50%, but they don't get that plus one. They're right on the marker. And then the next highest candidate has 17%. Have we ever been in a situation where that candidate with the 17% in the primary wins in the runoff, even though the other candidate had 50%? And I know that's a lot of numbers
Mhm.
right there
Yeah, this
to
is
say,
this is
but
too much math. Okay.
yeah, too much
Well, what
math
I'll
for a
tell
civics
you is
podcast.
that, like, so generally, yes. And what could happen is that the other voters for the 3rd and 4th and 5th candidate can consolidate sometimes behind that 2nd candidate and tip them over to be the winner. And fewer people turn out for the runoff too. So sometimes it's those people that are most excited that can help tip the 2nd ranked candidate into 1st place.
Yeah. So if your 17% are way more politically active than your 50% were in the primary, the 17% might show up and maybe the 50% don't show up. So
Exactly.
interesting.
So that's why that runoff, which is going to happen on Tuesday, June 23rd, is so important because so many people don't show up. And that is like the overtime. That is when the final decision is actually made. And there is early voting for runoffs too.
Okay. When is the early voting for runoffs?
The early voting for runoffs is a much shorter window. It's just 3 days, June 17th through Friday, June 19th. So mark your calendar because you will need to go back.
Okay. And a question about eligibility. If, let's say, I wasn't able to vote for the June 9th primary, can I still show up for the runoff?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing. If you didn't vote in the primary, you are still a registered voter and you can come on and show up for the second part and vote in the runoff. You can walk in, choose whichever party's runoff ballot you want. But if you did vote in the June 9th primary, you're locked into that party. So you can't switch over and vote a different ballot. But you can, of course, vote in the runoff for the same party that you voted in for regular voting.
So to recap, if there's a runoff, go and vote because that's when historically the voter turnout plummets. And we've just discussed why that's so important to do it. So pay attention. We'll be posting updates about that as it comes through. So don't leave the game when it goes into overtime, is the key point. But because we just talked about dates, I think maybe let's lay out the calendar clearly so everyone can lock these into their calendar on their phones right now. So if you're on your phone, pull up your calendar. If you're driving, do not do that, but take mental note of this. So Katie, let's make the schedule for everyone.
Yeah, if you're listening to this the week that this posts, right now through June 5th, Friday, June 5th, early voting is open 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. There are 5 places you can go vote early in Greenville County. Most people think about McAllister Square, but there's 4 other spaces out in the county, and I have to say those are really lovely places to vote because it's very quiet. It's probably closer to many of your homes. And then on Tuesday, June 9th, is the official primary election day, and polls are open, as they always are whenever there's an election day, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But again, we love voting early because who knows what could come up. You could get sick. You could have a flat tire on election day. We just urge you to really think about voting early. Once that is done, Wednesday, June 17th through Friday, June 19th is the early voting window for the runoff, which is highly, highly likely to happen. And then Tuesday, June 23rd is the actual runoff election day.
And I'm going to quickly make a comment here for everyone listening because this is coming out during early voting period for the primary. So if you're listening afterwards, skip forward maybe 20 seconds. But if it's still early voting right now, we have a few days left. You might be thinking, everyone's already voted. I don't need to go vote. We're not going to break any records. It's okay. The last 3 days of early voting have the highest turnout historically for 2024 and 2022. So those last 3 days have a huge surge. So it's not too late. It's never too late to go vote. So go and do that. And to make your homework so much easier, we have built a Simple Civics candidate lookup tool. It's live. You can go use it right now. If you go to our website, you'll get a pop-up that has a link to go to it. We've linked it in the menu bar. We've linked it everywhere, so it's easy to find. It's going to be in the show notes. All you do is you go in, you type your address, you pick your ballot, and you see exactly who is on that ballot. And if we've done an interview with that candidate, you can find the links for that interview right there. You also have all of the links for the candidates' websites and their social media, so you can find it right there and figure out exactly who they are, what they want to do, and if they are your candidate or not. So use the Simple Civics candidate lookup tool. You can even just Google it and it'll show up there, but it's a great tool as you're making this decision to figure out, who do I want to vote for? Because it can be overwhelming just to figure out who's in my district that I can vote for. So we've put it all there for you, including all of the statewide candidates that everyone in the state will be voting on, as well as the specific county council seats and everything that you need to figure out. So go check it out.
Nathaniel, it is so awesome. I cannot thank you enough for all the care and technical know-how you brought to designing it. Everyone I have showed it to loves it. And everyone listening, we do not care how you vote. We just want to make sure you have the information to do it confidently. Civic engagement is who we cheer for, and we want you to be a part of that. So get out there and vote, and thank you so much for listening.
Hi, Simple Civics Greenville County listeners, Nathaniel here. If you've made it this far, then we think you'll really love our newsletter. Sign up for bonus content, updates, and more right in your inbox. Look for the link in the description that says newsletter to sign up, or visit us at simpleCivicsGreenvilleCounty.org. Find the link in the menu that says newsletter and sign up there. We'll see you again next week.